Do you think that there's corruption in our government?
Hi, guys.
This is pretty much been explained.
Jonathon Daily.
The other thing I wanted to mention about January 6th is there's a lot of speculation, a lot of allegations, and there is some backing behind it as far as evidence goes that there were FBI or Capitol Police who actually encouraged, facilitated, and were involved in insinuating the riot and actually just let rioters go right in to the White House and to areas of the Capitol so that they could then make a story where there wasn't one. And then they arrested people, they ruined people's lives over it. But one of these stories, I got this from Candace Owens, but hey, take it with a grain of salt because she's a little cuckoo these days. In other regards, but this is from Blaze Media, so they still are a reputable news source. Blaze Media reported that after like 5 years of long investigating, they were able to find out that there were actual pipe bombs that were dropped in the Capitol. I don't think they went off or anything, but it was a news story to, it was to incite and to exacerbate the January 6th and said, oh, pipe bombs were fine. This was a terrorist act. They were trying to blow up things at the Capitol. Come to find out, 5 years later, Blaze Media is reporting that it was actually a former Capitol Police officer. I don't have her name here, but she is in the clip, who actually was the one who dropped these pipe bombs off. And yeah, of course, they love these stories. They love to do these things. Do you think that there's corruption in our government? Hell yes, because they know that the immediate, the news cycle that lasts about 10 minutes because we have such quick attention spans now that by the time 5 years later, which is what it took 5 years later to find out about this January 6th incident, they know that it's not a story anymore. It's 5 years later. By the time you find out the actual truth, there's going to be little to nothing you really can do about it. And people are just going to brush it off and say it's a conspiracy. But take a listen to this.
Now, I knew instantly as a DC resident that the feds were involved because of the pipe bombs. That was it. I knew they were involved when I heard that pipe bombs were mysteriously dropped off the night before at the RNC headquarters, and we just don't know who did that because I live there, and it's the Capitol, so every square inch there's a camera. You just can't do that. You can't just get away from being a couple of blocks away from the White House and dropping off pipe bombs, right? Anyways, this weekend, after 5 long years, finally, the person, and I'll say allegedly, because I guess we're going to have to wait for the feds to dispute this, but the person responsible for dropping off those pipe bombs was revealed to be a Fed. More specifically, a 31-year-old woman and a United States Capitol Police officer named Shawnee Ray Kirkuff, right? A reporter named Steve Baker, which deserves all of the credit on this amazing discovery. And I'm going to let you listen to Glenn Beck, who is interviewing Steve Baker, to tell you about how he came across this footage and how that went down.
When I stumbled on what I stumbled on, and because as I said, I've been pulling these threads for years, and I pulled one last Wednesday, 2 weeks ago today, rather. And when I pulled this thread, I was so shocked by what I saw, I immediately took it to a source in one of the most important, highest level investigative federal agencies in the country. I immediately took it to our sources there, and I said, you have to see this. After they looked at it for about 2 hours, the response that I got back was, holy F. And then the follow-up response was, she's one of us.
And when you find out the position, this is going to lead, it's not just this one person. This now will implicate so many people at the highest levels that had to have known because of what happened after January 6th. How big does this net get?
How big does this net get? I'm feeling this way about the Charlie Kirk investigation. A lot of people are going to get swept up in this investigation, perhaps the same people that are going to get swept up in the January 6th. And it's not going to be this left or right story, right? Now, much more is going to come out. I'm not here to cover all of January 6th and what they have been unpacking. More will come out in the coming days. What we do know is, like I said, this was a 5-year investigation. It involved forensic analysis. A CIA spokeswoman, Liz Lyons, stated that Shawnee Kirkhoff, the alleged person who dropped off these pipe bombs, worked in Capitol Police campus security. She lives in Alexandria, Virginia. She is apparently now under the watch of law enforcement officers because the Blaze News editor-in-chief decided to pull up to her house to just kind of see if any action was happening at her home. And then he instantly got stopped by local police before they allowed him to leave. Now, surprise, surprise, I think it's always the feds, and we might be being ruled by criminals. Like, I don't know.
So yeah, if you saw that, if you listened to it, looking into it yourself. But if you are telling me, there's so much around January 6th, and there's people that have looked into it way more than me. But I'm telling you, it was absolutely something drummed up to be a huge, riot, insurrection, whatever you want to call it, and it just was not that. The Black Lives Matter riots and the George Floyd riots were actual riots in which billions of dollars of property was destroyed. People were actually hurt, and there was fires, explosions, etc. The January 6th insurrection was a freaking joke. But that's all I'll say about it. But believe what the feds say, because the feds will deny everything. If you want to keep believing them, go for it. Be ignorant. That's fine.
For the latest in case updates, legal tips, news, and politics, make sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram and our other socials, and above all, subscribe on YouTube to get your dose of excellence on a daily basis.